When the bulldozer's engine roared to life and tore through my rain garden, the sound felt like a punch to my chest. Neighbors stood on their porches, some even clapping, while the HOA board smiled like they had just saved the neighborhood from chaos. But deep beneath that hill, beneath all their smugness, something else was moving. The earth itself was shifting. Yeah, that was the day I learned just how fast arrogance can crumble. Let me take you back. When I first bought my home on Crestwood Ridge, all I wanted was peace. A quiet view, some clean air, maybe a little patch of nature I could call my own. My house sat on the upper edge of a steep hill that overlooked the valley. It was beautiful, the kind of view that made you forget how expensive the mortgage was. But it was also a slope that could turn deadly if the drainage ever failed. The realtor brushed it off, said the builders had handled it. But I've spent years hiking muddy trails, studying native plants, learning how nature stabilizes itself when we let it. I knew better. So I built a rain garden. Not a concrete wall, not a fancy water feature, just an ecosystem. A living sponge of deep-rooted native plants, small berms and gravel paths that slowed stormwater and soaked it safely into the earth. It wasn't a decoration, it was protection. I spent months shaping that hillside with my own hands, and it worked. Every storm I'd watch the water roll gently through the plants, disappear into the soil, and the hill stayed strong. At first the HOA said nothing. Crestwood Meadows was obsessed with aesthetic harmony, their code words for cookie-cutter lawns and sterile flower beds. My yard was different, sure, but I kept it neat. I thought maybe they'd see the beauty in something natural. Spoiler alert, they didn't. It started with whispers. A neighbor at the mailbox saying, "It looks a bit wild, don't you think?" Then the HOA newsletter came out with glossy pictures of uniform lawns and a little paragraph about preserving property value through consistent landscaping. Next came the notes folded typed taped to my door. Landscaping inconsistency, they said, as if my garden was some kind of rebellious teenager. I responded the way any rational adult would. I printed little educational signs and laminated them. Pollinator zone, erosion control area. I even added a cheerful QR code that linked to a website explaining the science of rain gardens. I figured, okay, maybe education will fix ignorance. It didn't. 2 weeks later, another letter. This one stamped with bold red words, "Code violation." The handbook didn't even mention rain gardens, but apparently that didn't stop them from making up new rules on the fly. Then one afternoon, the Queen herself arrived. Veronica Langston, HOA president, self-appointed guardian of suburban perfection. Platinum hair sprayed to architectural stiffness, pastel blouse sharper than her tone. She showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, and delivered a 15-minute lecture about visual uniformity and the fear of critters. I tried to explain how the garden prevented erosion, how it protected the entire hill. She just smiled and said, "Rules are rules," then marched off like she'd just sentenced me to lawn care purgatory. From that day, it was war. Weekly violation notices, grass too tall, unauthorized rocks, invasive species. Every single accusation was false. Everything I'd planted was native. She was inventing crimes just to flex her power. And then, the ambush. While I was working overtime on a big project, they held a special meeting. No notice, no agenda. Just Veronica and her inner circle. They voted to restore my property to community standards. By the time I got home Monday morning, my garden was gone. Bulldozed. Flattened. The hand-built berms were slashed into muddy trenches, the oak sapling I'd nurtured torn out by its roots. A $500 invoice was taped to my door. Restoration services, it said. That moment broke something in me. I stood there staring at the wreckage, mud everywhere, crushed signs, broken branches. Months of effort gone in a few hours. I didn't even know who to call first, the HOA, the police, a lawyer. I just remember sitting on the porch numb. For the first time, I felt completely powerless. Part of me wanted to give up. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have just planted some fake turf and called it a day. I remember thinking, is this really worth it? Am I the problem here? But then I looked down at the bare earth already forming little rivulets from a light drizzle, and something in me hardened. No, This wasn't about looks. This was about respect for the land, for science, for common sense. Then came the rain. At first it was light, just a misty drizzle that made the air smell clean. But within a week it turned into a full-blown storm. Water poured down the slope with nowhere to go. The yard that used to absorb it now turned into a slip and slide of runoff. I watched helplessly as streams of brown water rushed past where my rain garden used to be straight toward the homes below. By the third day, sidewalks, cracked fences, leaned patches of lawn began to sink. I walked the block like a storm chaser, filming everything. Then I called Greg Foster, an old college buddy who'd become a geotechnical engineer. Greg came over with his soil probes and gear, poked around for a few hours, then looked at me dead serious. "You're sitting on a loaded spring," he said. "That garden of yours, it was the only thing keeping this hill together." He explained how without the plants, water was pooling between the soil layers, building pressure like a shaken soda can. We documented everything, photos, videos, his written report. I sent copies to the HOA certified mail email, even posted it on the community board. Their response: Veronica took the mic at the next HOA meeting and laughed. Called my warnings alarmist. Said, "Some people just don't understand community values." That's when I started to doubt myself again. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the hill would hold. Maybe I should just move on and stop fighting people who loved rules more than reality. But deep down, I knew what was coming. You can't argue with gravity. 3 nights later at 2 a.m., I heard a sound I'll never forget. A crack like thunder, but from underground. I jumped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and ran outside. The retaining wall behind Veronica's house had split in half. A section of it, 10 feet wide, collapsed and sent a tidal wave of mud, rocks, and fencing crashing down into the Jacksons' yard below. It looked like a chocolate waterfall of destruction. Lawn chairs, floated flower pots, smashed, the smell of wet earth filled the air. And there she was, Veronica, standing on her patio, frozen, screaming into her phone while the ground kept sliding. I just watched, heart pounding, a sick mix of vindication and horror in my chest. The hill had finally fought back. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Cracks spread through foundations. Doors stopped closing properly. Lawns caved in. The worst hit Veronica's mansion. Rumor had it her newly remodeled kitchen had a fractured support wall. Karma was busy working overtime. Then came the insurance nightmare. Every homeowner filed claims, and every one of them got denied. The reports all said the same thing: damage caused by human interference, man-made erosion. Translation: the HOA had destroyed a working erosion control system. No coverage, no payouts. The neighborhood was livid. That's when I filed my lawsuit. Property destruction, negligence, breach of fiduciary duty, you name it. My lawyer uncovered something even juicier: the bulldozing company was owned by Veronica's cousin. No bids, no permits, just a quick cash deal behind closed doors. Court day felt like a scene out of a legal drama. My lawyer dropped evidence like bombs, emails of Veronica mocking dirt hippies, HOA memos, ignoring expert warnings, bank transfers to her cousin's company. The judge's face went redder by the minute. When the verdict came, it was almost poetic. We won, big time, $1.2 million in damages. The HOA had to issue a special assessment to every homeowner to pay it off. Imagine explaining to your neighbors that their skyrocketing fees were because you bulldozed the one thing keeping their homes from sliding down the hill. Veronica resigned the next day. Half the board followed her out the door. Her house sat empty for months. The foundation still cracked, the once perfect lawn overtaken by dandelions. The queen of conformity brought down by the very earth she tried to control. As for me, I rebuilt the rain garden, bigger, stronger, with terraced levels and deep-rooted trees. And at the top I set a stone plaque that reads, "Stabilizing your homes since 2025, courtesy of me." Now the new HOA actually promotes native planting. They hold erosion workshops. Kids chase butterflies where weed killers once ruled. The hill is healing, and so am I. You know, people think fighting an HOA is about ego. It's not. It's about sanity, about knowing when someone's rules stop protecting the community and start destroying it. Because in the end, you can enforce laws on people, sure, but you can't enforce them on nature.